This is 680 CJOB.
1:32 on this Friday afternoon. Kathy Kennedy with you. Hope you are having a good Friday afternoon. I always enjoy having a moment to spend with our next guest. She is a best-selling author. She's a healthcare experience expert. And if you have a chance, pick up her book, Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. Jennifer FitzPatrick is joining us now. Hi, Jennifer. So happy you could take time and join us on this Friday.
Hey, Kathy. Thanks for having me back.
I always learn so much from you, and I know our audience is going to learn a lot from you again today. And I want to start by saying that according to the National Institute on Aging, 79% of people aged 70 and older have at least one chronic condition. And what often happens is that, one partner becomes one caregiver. Talk to us about what that means, Jennifer, and how that role can change a relationship to begin with.
Well, yeah, as people age, we are more susceptible to chronic and acute health conditions. And when we experience hospitalization or maybe some kind of incident like a stroke or a fall, a lot of times we're going to need some care. And it could be short-term, but sometimes it can be long-term. And if you're married or you have a significant other, very quickly that person makes that transition into a family caregiver, and it's a very difficult transition, especially if it's a situation where it's going to be a long-term issue.
Well, and in particular, Jennifer, during the pandemic, when, hospital availability wasn't great, long-term care access wasn't available for a long time, at least in this province, yes, then many partners became caregivers.
It got really tough because people, especially in the beginning, it was, do I even want my partner to go to the hospital? Would I want them to go to any kind of community or facility? Because there was so much fear. And then, are they going to get COVID? Are they going to die? We know now that even if you are an institutionalized older adult, you still have a 94% chance of recovery from COVID. But back in March 2020, we didn't know that. But then it became, I think, for a lot of people, should I bring an aide into the home? Should I let friends and family help? Or, oh, gosh, if my wife goes into a facility, will I be able to visit her? So I still think there's a lot of reluctance to get help. There's a fear, am I going to lose access to this person? Am I going to be able to visit them? So I think it's really important that we are offering as much support as friends, as family members, as neighbors, people from the faith community when we see somebody we know transition into this caregiving partner role.
So, Jennifer, should caregivers create a care plan? And if so, what should be included in that plan?
Well, it depends on what the issue is for your loved one. So let's give you an example. When my grandmom had a fall, years ago, we knew there was 4 weeks where she was going to be immobilized. And her doctor said, you know what, she's not going to be able to use her arms, her hands, her shoulders for about a month. So 3 of my aunts and I committed that we're going to be with her at all times, and we took turns. Now, that was a care plan we could make because we knew the end date in sight. But with a lot of families, you really don't know when the end date is in sight. So I think it's important to talk to the doctor, talk to anybody else that's helping, like if there's physical therapists or social workers or any other nurses involved. Try to get a picture. What's the prognosis? How long will the person need help? And then try to make a plan about how much can you as the partner do, because what we see a lot of spouses and significant others try to do everything. And that might be possible if it's a 4-week period, like I talked about with my grandmother. If it's years, that is just insurmountable. So you have to have an open mind and decide, I'm going to look at resources. I'm going to bring other types of help into our lives.
Well, and they should not feel guilty about doing that. It doesn't mean that they are, failing their spouse.
Guilt is the most common emotion that we hear from people who are least guilty. I think that so often we hear from people who say they feel guilty, And I ask them, why? What have you done? I really try to turn it around to the family caregiver. What have you done that you should feel guilty about? Now, listen, Kathy, I think we've talked about this before. If your loved one has Alzheimer's and you're leaving him alone, you're going to learn from that. Don't do it again. If you keep doing it, then that's something you should feel bad about. But once you know better, you're going to, like Oprah says, you're going to do better, or Maya Angelou, I think. But like if you're neglecting your loved one on purpose, okay, feel guilty. But most caregivers that express that they're dealing with a tremendous amount of guilt, they are doing the best that they can. You have every right to have a life. Again, the example I gave about being a 4-week caregiver for my grandmother, that was doable for 4 people. That would not be doable for 4 family members if that was over 4 years. So there's nothing wrong with saying, here's the amount of energy that I have, here's the amount of time that I can contribute, and looking at not just your friends, your family, but also the healthcare system, looking at what services are out there. There's a terrific, I do want to mention, I'm on the care advisory board for a wonderful charity for the actor Seth Rogen and his wife Lauren Miller Rogen. It's called HFC. They provide free home care grants to families who are taking care of a loved one with dementia. So if you go to wearehfc.org, if your spouse or your loved one is dealing with dementia and you're helping take care of them in the home, you can apply for a grant, and it's good in Canada as well as the United States.
Wow. That's a fantastic resource. Okay, we're going to remind everybody about that at the end of our chat. But Jennifer, again, it speaks to, the stress that caregivers are under, and respite for them is just as important as caring for the person who they're caring for.
If you don't take breaks, or if you think you're the only person that can do all the tasks, you're in martyr syndrome. And we know what happens to people who are martyrs. They die. And I say that not to scare people, but if caregiving is your whole life. Now, again, if maybe your wife had a knee replacement and you're helping her to recuperate. Okay, that's fine. But if your wife has debilitating Parkinson's disease, or your husband has, chronic, COPD, you can't do it indefinitely for months and years on end. You have every right to have a full life that includes socializing with friends, that includes taking care of your physical and your spiritual needs. And it's just unconscionable to me that people feel bad about that, because if you don't do those things for yourself, your loved one is not getting the best of you. Yeah,
without a doubt. And people have to remember that self-care is just as important. But Jennifer, talk to us finally about when caregivers feel more like a caretaker than a spouse, and the stress that can create.
Well, I think that's a big part of how you approach it. So if you are the sole caregiver and you don't let anybody help, you're probably not going to see each other as partners at all anymore. That you're not going to look at him and see your lover, your husband, your friend. You're going to see a patient. And that they're going to look at you as, their nursemaid. So it's really got to be a conscious decision that I'm going to make time. I'm not going to do all the tasks. I'm going to make sure that I outsource some of this. And listen, of course, there's going to be some tasks, like maybe you as the spouse, you want to be the one that always goes to the doctor's appointments. That's reasonable. But you don't have to be the one that's always helping them, say, in the bathroom, or always cooking all their meals, or always doing every single task. There are items that you absolutely can outsource. And it's really, I think the caregiving partner really has to say, I'm going to still be the partner of my loved one who is ill. And, you have some control over that. Now, let's say you have a loved one who has a cognitive issue like Alzheimer's. When you're dealing with a situation like that can be tough in a different way, because maybe you and your spouse have always connected. You could talk about anything and everything. Politics, You could talk about, things going on with your friends and your family. You confide in each other about your dreams. And all of a sudden, if your loved one can't hold a conversation anymore, what I recommend is you've got to find other people in your life to kind of fill some of those needs. Now, I'm not saying that anyone can ever take the place of your wife. If your wife was your confidant and your best friend, and you always told each other your dreams and your secrets and all of your fears, I'm not saying someone can replace that wife of yours because she's very special to you, but you need to find other outlets. You need to connect with friends, maybe talk to a therapist, maybe meet with a support group. But I think also if you are in a situation where somebody has Alzheimer's, and of course I'd love for people to read my book, Cruising Through Caregiving, but in particular for spouses who are taking care of a loved one with dementia, there's a great book by Dr. Ruth Westheimer, and it's called The Caregiver's Guide to Alzheimer's. And it talks a lot about, how to make sure that you're getting your needs met when you don't have a partner anymore.
And that it's just so very, very important because, people can tend to lose themselves in these scenarios when they've had to turn to be a caregiver. Jennifer, always appreciate your insight. Once again, what is that website that Seth Rogen is a part of?
Sure. So Seth and Lauren Rogen's, their charity is called HFC. We are HFC.org. And if you're a dementia caregiver taking care of your loved one at home, what you want to do is go on there. They have all kinds of resources, but perhaps most importantly, the grant for home care respite in the home.
That's fantastic. Jennifer, thank you so very much. I appreciate taking the time, and I really do encourage people to pick up a copy of her book. It is fabulous, Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. Have a wonderful weekend, Jennifer.
You too, Kathy. Thanks as always.
You bet. It is 1:45. We'll take a break. Weather is next on 680 CJOB.